Welcome to the Lifestyle First podcast, discussing lifestyle medicine and making self-care as easy as 1, 2, 3. 1 question, 2 research reviews, and 3 actionable health tips, all centered around the Lifestyle First method, your blueprint for the 10 key routes of optimal health and happiness. And now your host, lifestyle medicine physician and coach, Dr. Alka Patel.
Hi, hey, and hello, and welcome to Series 11, Episode 7 of the Lifestyle First podcast. What's the theme today? The theme of today's conversation is why for your connections. So here's a question. Who do you spend the most time with? Have you ever wondered who that is? Who is it that you're always hanging around with? Well, the answer is yourself. You are, of course, most connected with yourself. But sometimes it doesn't feel like that. Maybe sometimes you don't feel that connected with you. You just don't know who you are. I mean, really know who you are, what you stand for, what you believe. And if I think back to those 7 days that I had in silence this summer, that was an opportune time to connect with myself, to just discover what I thought, what I felt, what I loved. And here's the thing. If you're the person that you spend most time with, you better be someone that you love, right? I mean, we do hear it all the time, don't we? Self-love. But what is that? And why does it even matter? Well, that is what my guest today is going to help us to explore. Let me introduce you to Simon Wisdom, founder of Nobul Men. Now, Simon believes that if you're not in love with your own life, then you can't expect others to be either. And what Simon's doing is creating a movement that relates to owning what he describes as your masculinity. So what Simon does is he deconstructs relationship difficulties and those difficulties in those deeper connections that you have, say with your spouse or with your partner. And then he distills this back to the most important relationship you have, which is with yourself. Simon, welcome to the show.
Hi, Alka. Thank you for having me.
So masculinity and femininity, be really great to kick off by defining it, because I think we all think of it in different ways. So I would really love to know what you think masculinity is. When you're talking about masculinity, what do you mean? Is it energy? Is it hormones? Is it something else? What's your definition, Simon?
Yeah, great question. So I used to think masculinity was the exclusive place of men, and femininity was the exclusive place of women. And then over time, I heard these terms metrosexual, which I was classed as at one point, which meant I was more in touch with my feminine side. But I didn't really understand what that was and why these places seemed to be exclusive. And it wasn't till my divorce and the work that I did that I really kind of zoned in on masculine energy and feminine energy. And for me, they're just are different ways of being focused. So masculine energy is, we'd recognize that as doing energy, as winning, as succeeding. It would be mission, purpose, all of those things where we get stuff done. And it's not, masculinity is not the exclusive place for men. It's we see this in the workplace. Women will be in their masculine energy when they are at work doing, succeeding, or at home or doing any part of that stuff. So it's an energy, and the feminine energy is much more of an emotive energy, a sensing, a feeling, a flowing, a radiant energy. And so we'd recognize feminine energy as music, as anything that's in the arts, as anything that is kind of sensing and feeling. So those are the two different places, and they're not exclusive. And so we dance across those energies throughout our day, throughout the night, and ongoing. So, and that's when they get really exciting, when you start talking about the dance of the energy within yourself and within others.
Yeah, so I love that. I think that's really helpful way that you've described that, this sense of not necessarily proportionality, but flow within an individual that's not defined by your gender specifically, because that's a totally different conversation. But this energy that's within all of us and the differences that we see in different environments in one person, depending on what energy, what's radiating through at any moment in time. And I guess my next question then, following on from that, is more about the relevance of it in terms of recognizing, say, in yourself. Let's start with just us, the individual, as opposed to relationship between two people. Why is it important to be aware of what energy is flowing through you, whether it's the masculine or the feminine? How does it help you being aware of it?
Well, I think I think it's about understanding what we are feeling in that moment, and also our ability to kind of sense and feel and get things done. You know, there's a time and a place for us to feel into emotions. So whether that's at the end of the workday, and we often find that we switch out of our masculine energy into our feminine energy by grabbing a glass of wine or listening to a piece of music or doing something to disconnect from that doing and sensing and whatever. Now, if we do get home from work and we just carry on in that place, then sometimes we can just feel out of touch with ourselves, and though we haven't relaxed, we haven't taken time for ourselves. And so that, you know, it's not necessarily healthy for us to feel into that all the time. So understanding how we're feeling, what's going on for us, and being able to switch from one into the other will help us to either get stuff done or help us relax or help us feel into something else. And we kept this exclusive to just how we feel, but connection with others is so massively important that knowing where we are and being able to sense that in others is the start of connection, I think.
Yeah, and that's really valuable to recognize in yourselves. I talk a lot about, I guess, recognizing the signals, and from a sort of more medical perspective, and this might fit in with that masculine energy that you're talking about, is that stress level and that cortisol activation and that go, go, go. But what I'd be interested to know from you is, how do you switch it? Because I know how you can switch off your stress responses and change that cortisol response. But when you're switching your energy, are you talking about the same thing? Once you're aware, I'm in my masculine, it's not serving me right now, I want to switch it to my feminine. How do you do that? And is it like that instant?
Well, I think it depends on the situation, doesn't it? And is it easy to suddenly switch? I think in certain circumstances we do find it easy, don't we? We're sat, we're doing lots of things, we are communicating, we are getting stuff done, we are succeeding, we are winning, and we just go, do you know what? That's enough. That's enough for today. I've had enough. I don't want to do anymore. And so sometimes we just say, that's it. For men, they'll say, I'm going to the pub, or I'm going for a walk, or I'm just going to go and put some music on in the car, and I'm not taking any more calls. And that, by the way, it's not an exclusive place for men, but that's that masculine energy that you kind of switch off from. So I think sometimes it is easy. And then I think it can get a lot more complex when you are talking about emotions. So if there's something that particularly hits you hard, like a bereavement or a end of a relationship, sometimes we find that people deal with that in different ways. So my mum passed away last year, and I could see that my brother and I dealt with it very, very differently. I switched off my emotive energy to get stuff done, and I dealt with my emotive side of that bereavement when I chose to. And he kind of went straight into that emotion and struggled for several days to get stuff done, and then came out of it. And I think the power to see it and understand it. I'm not saying one was better than the other, by the way. I think me switching off from that feminine energy, I realized it actually didn't hit me straight away. I realized after a week or two that I hadn't listened to a single piece of music in the car for over 2 weeks. And so I consciously and unconsciously switched it off. So sometimes I think when we're dealing with things that are particularly tough in both sides of energy, you know, a really tough work assignment, or even, you know, a really tough emotive piece of work for us, then it's not that easy, is it?
So why don't we go back then to the question that we started off this conversation with then, which is why then understanding masculinity is important in marriage, in relationships of that nature, in terms of that connection? Why do we need to understand that when it comes to marriage?
Yeah, well, let me tell you what I found. I think what I learned through my own experience was through running large companies and working in those places. My masculine energy was strong. I knew who I was. I knew how to be a great leader. I knew that the power that I held was something in terms of sometimes being dominant, but very rarely around decision making, but often just allowing the rest of my team to be the dominant and be submissive, because power is not just about dominance, it's about being submissive as well. But whilst I was playing large at work, I was actually playing smaller and smaller at home, because those values and boundaries weren't so clear for me at home. And so I would play smaller and smaller over time. I just became less attracted to my own life, because I wasn't so clear about who I was, what I wanted. And so where I started off in the relationship, having purpose and drive and being focused and knowing what I wanted in work and in play, in terms of cycling and skiing, and taking that energy back into that relationship over time with kids and work, I just wasn't present at home. I wasn't playing that importance to that. And actually my masculine energy just wasn't there. My personal brand wasn't there. And so I just became a shadow of myself at home. And that's not attractive.
Yeah.
It's not attractive to me, and therefore it wasn't attractive to her. So in the time I've now worked with hundreds of men over the last few years, I've realized those patterns are the same. It's critically important to know who you are, know what you want, know where you're going, and hold all of those different things that are important to you there.
Yeah. And that is so critical. And as you say, it's an all too familiar story as well. It's almost those multiple faces that we all have, and what's the identity you choose to show up with, rather than thinking, well, this is me and I'm me wherever I am. So what would you say then to people who are listening now, where marriage is not feeling the same as it did, as you've just described at the beginning, when you were kind of showing up with your inner identity that you really connected to? What would you say? I think there's two conversations. One, to say the man who's recognizing that in himself. He may be, a leader at work, or a CEO, or a director, or whatever that job title is, and come home and it's a very different energy and there's something missing. And vice versa to the woman, the wife, the partner, who's noticing that in her partner, because these aren't easy conversations to have, even though you might recognize them. How do you start a conversation about this within a marriage?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's sometimes difficult without getting into complaining, explaining, or, from a man's point of view, mansplaining, as we necessarily call it. And so I think it's more around leading and behaving in a way that you want to. If you are authentically who you want to be and living in that way, and holding space for everything that's really important to you, whether that's work or children or your wife, or the other way around, your husband, your partner, then you will pull the right people towards you. You'll pull your wife, you'll pull your man towards you, because that's what's important. It's important to be who you want to be and take that energy into the relationship. So it's not an easy conversation to have sometimes, but holding space for and being present with your partner and doing the things that are really important is massively important. If you place her or him somewhere below work, somewhere below children, somewhere below everything else, then don't expect that person to want to be able to give back. But if you also place everything else below that, then that's all consuming and smothering as well, right? So there is a balance to every part of our lives, is what I've learned. And so to a man who is feeling low on energy and life, and feeling like he is not enjoying both his relationship and everything else, it's getting back to that authentic masculine, getting back to the essence of who he exactly is and putting those things back into his life for him, I think is one of the first stages to really try to start to pull those things back to him. And in relationships where it's breaking down, you can't always guarantee that you're going to be able to fix it. But the most important thing is to be who you want to be, right?
Yeah, totally. Which takes us all the way back to what you've said in terms of your ethos, which is if you don't love yourself, how are you going to be able to expect others to do that for you? So it comes back to starting with you, doesn't it? So I think this would be a really great place, Simon, then to move into those 3 actions, really clear actions that people listening can take that are really resonating with what you're saying in terms of recognizing that energy deficiency or that energy dance that you're talking about as well. What's 3 actions people can take?
And now, here is your lifestyle first prescription. Your 3 activating actions to take you from knowing to doing.
So I came up with 3 for this. So I think it's focusing on your personal brand. It's understanding what your values and your boundaries are, the things that are absolutely so critical to you that they're non-negotiable. And the reason that they're massively important is because when you understand what those are and you have the conversations with the people that are critically important to you in life around those things, you'll stop complaining and explaining around some of the smaller stuff. And we move away from those conversations. We need to have them. I think recognizing the ability to dance with each other, understanding that our energies and the way we feel is constantly moving is massively important. Just hold space and listen and try and understand and try and dance with it, and understand, for women, understand that a man in his masculine is where he feels his most attractive, and for a woman as well in her femininity, that's the place. So just try and play and dance with that, and also that attraction is always in flow. So there is no right or wrong answer. So being present, allowing somebody to want to have space and taking that space for themselves, as well as knowing when somebody just wants you to listen without fixing it. Intimacy is a constant dance. It's not that end of the night thing where you say, let's just rub each other's feet or have a hug. Intimacy is so much more. It's a constant dance around understanding each other. So just understanding attraction is always in flow. Understanding who you are and standing for that is massively important. And just understanding that, dancing with each other is also massively important, is really good.
Yeah. Those are great. I think those are 3 things that really have a huge amount of depth to them as well. None of them are necessarily easy, but all of them are absolutely vital, aren't they? Because this isn't necessarily about finding a fix. It's more about find you first and then create that energy, which will then very much more naturally just do the thing it's meant to and allow you to be your authentic self. So thank you for that, Simon. I think this has been a lovely conversation. There's so much you've said that we could really, really go much, much deeper into. And I know you've been very transformative in really helping so many people to just unlock all of this at a much deeper depth. So where are people going to be able to connect with you and find out more about what you do?
So the best thing to do is probably email me at simon@nobul.men. Nice, easy email. And then they can connect with me directly. Or alternatively, I think we will post the connection into the Nobul Men website in the podcast itself, if that's okay.
Yes, of course. Yeah, lovely. Yeah, I'll put all of your contact details in the show notes as well, so people really can get in touch very easily. So thank you so much, Simon. That was a really lovely conversation. You've given me much to think about, and I'm sure everyone listening as well. Thank you.
Thank you for inviting me.
And I wish everyone listening a happy, healthy day.
Thanks for joining us on the Lifestyle First podcast, making self-care as easy as 1, 2, 3. Don't forget to subscribe and share, and we'd love it if you'd be kind enough to leave a review. To learn more or to arrange a consultation, please visit www.dralkapatel.com. See you next time.